This is the second time within the past week that I have this memory, but I just have trouble remembering the exact detail of how it happened. When I was new at my job, we had a meeting back when department meetings were happening a little more often. And I wish I remembered the context of how this conversation began, but the point is that at the time, my manager told someone who was saying something or asking some question, with her response being, "Now, how much do we pay?" When you're getting paid what the minimum was at the time, then so on and so forth. And then I looked at it as, I guess it's kind of true, because at the time, the pay that we started off with was considered competitive. And looking back, I am utterly appalled by that, because now I am making double what I was making at the time. And I know that getting paid double nowadays is not getting me as far as what I used to make at the time, even with the financial issues that were following me at the time. I feel like I could definitely make more happen more safely back at the time. And the point is that at the time when I heard my manager say that, she's the manager who I have mentioned before used to be intimidating. Like, she had a way of saying things that in a sense intimidated you to submission. And at the time when she said that, I said, well, she's right. I mean, other places pay, what's the minimum? 725, 750. And I happened to start off some dollars above that with no experience. There are people perhaps older than me with more experience than me who aren't starting off with this amount in the same industry, the retail industry. But now looking back, now that I'm actually confident and pretty much impossible to intimidate or offend now, I look back at that and I think back to the person and I'm like, this person was simply a product of what the work culture was back in those days. And the reason I say that is because, like I have mentioned before, there seems to be a transition period where management looked and felt tyrannical and very inhumane, versus in the modern day now, where I guess we can thank, in a sense, all these movements that gave temporarily, however temporary, some power back to the worker in the form of, say, during the emergency of 2019, we were needed desperately, and technology, I guess, didn't have all the solutions for that. And I'm guessing that's part of the thing that motivates companies to start relying less on workers, which to this day I still don't understand why you would want to get rid of workers when workers are consumers, and consumers without money cannot spend money in your business. But I'm guessing at this point, I don't know what investments are. I don't understand how investments work. I don't understand how invest money, send money to this, I don't know, stock, and let money work for you, how it just grows over time. How is it that money is not something sentient performing a job or a service, but yet depositing it into something generates return? To me, that is a gross way of making money, because usually it's the people who already had money to begin with, the ones who have the opportunity to make their wealth even bigger, whereas the average person, they have to wait years, because more than likely they're going to be the first person in their household or in their generation who has the opportunity to invest, but they start investing trivial amounts and they won't see the return until ages after, unless there's something that is under development that can, I guess, provide you with that once in a lifetime opportunity that you can invest in. With all that said, I think back to why my manager would say such a thing. And I just remember very vividly thinking at the time that, yes, she's right, but I don't think that that is the response I would give a subordinate asking me something. And another example I can give of that was one time I had my immediate colleague, someone who worked in my department, and I were taking a break, and our manager of our manager's managers walked in, and my coworker was telling me, I have said this story before, but about how she was feeling that the day was a little overwhelming, that the day was just challenging, difficult, and that she's not in a very good place. This was before the grand emergency of 2019, when people used to actually stay at the job for at least over 2 years and turnover was not so high. And then that manager told my colleague, well, colleague, you don't have to work here. And then I was just appalled that such words came from a manager. So ultimately, I said, give me 1 second, we'll resume in a moment. I think I got up to go to the restroom and then came back, or I went to my locker and then came back. I don't remember. I just know that while that manager was there, we paused, and then when she was gone, we resumed the conversation. And I was like, well, I'm sorry to hear that you're going through that. Just remember that we have company resources that aim at helping you get over some things. They may not resolve it, but in my personal experience, at least talking to them once inspired me to find certain solutions. I think I sounded more managerial than our own manager by me saying that, because I would never say to someone, just fucking quit. Like, I may suggest it when I'm upset about someone's performance. Like, say, this person, every time they come here, they're always talking shit, they're always being negative, they do a shit job, they're always late, something like that. I may at that moment, not directly at the person, but to whomever I'm venting to, and it has to be a privileged person to hear me vent in that manner in the first place, to be like, yo, why doesn't this clown just fucking quit, right? That's all they need to do. Just quit. Clearly, you're not suitable for this place. This place is not suitable for you. It sucks to have you around, period. Just go. Obviously, I don't lie, so I can tell you that I'm that person who has that attitude sometimes. The day before yesterday, I was angrily bawling my eyes out on the way to work, and when I got to work, I caved in to one of the offices and I just let it all out. I was frustrated. I was like, I hate this place. I can't wait to quit. I don't fucking care. This, that, and the other. And then I said to myself, what was actually making me feel that way? And at that moment in time, work hadn't even done anything to me yet, because I hadn't even made it there yet. And I had been off for 2 days before that shift. But my anger, I realized, was from something else, somewhere else. But because work is something that I associate negatively now because of the unpleasantries from people, occasionally the demands of the job can become too great if physically I'm not in a good position myself, because I'm made of bones and flesh and these things fall apart and I'm enduring it. And in modern days, I don't understand why enduring such discomforts needs to continue to be a thing. Where is the progress that we so much describe, and how we're supposed to be superior as a civilization than we were centuries ago? I don't get it, but I guess I don't get sick enough thanks to the minuscule big steps that we made, such as having vaccines, whether people believe in them or not, and having better sanitation. Those little basic things that keep you feeling just fine. But sometimes when other things don't see progress and they are overdue for progress, I think that's what I can describe as an inherited frustration. And I guess people in the past, maybe they didn't completely see it as a frustration because they didn't know anything else to do in their lives. It was just what was inculcated, what was accepted. It's what their brains were shaped and molded into. But now the modern person has so many different choices to consider pursuing that I guess it creates a pressure. And the pressure that I felt was, I'm just breaking myself down and I have nothing to show for it, and I never will. But just because I accept that, it doesn't mean that I cannot be a human being about it and be like, I want to have something different. My opportunity is not going to be there, and there's not a healthy way for me to pursue it. So I just need to continue to accept that this is the role I'm going to inhabit because of the things that I'm not willing to take a part in. the cost I'm not willing to pay, the sacrifices I'm not willing to make? Why is it that I cannot have the gain without having a major loss somewhere else? Sometimes it just catches up with you and you have to let it out. And the difference between me and the people who just talk shit and our little action is that I talk shit, I get mad, I get pissed, but at least I'm actually a good performer. I'm reliable. But now it's getting to the point where I'm like, that reliability maybe is what's continuing to hurt me. And now I'm kind of testing, imposing a new barrier, a new limit to what I deem acceptable and what I don't. And the most important thing I gotta do is not allow for other people's experience to define me. Because there are some people who I look at who are absolutely not having my attitude, not having my kind of energy, not having my opinion and thoughts and feelings about the cycle that we're in as workers. But then I think about, well, the difference between me and that person is this person started at a different time than me, their opportunities were different, even their community was different. Prices were reasonable, rent was reasonable, familial presence was a thing, and that's not something I have had. Basically, compare and contrast. That's why it's important that you sit down and you evaluate the situation. Don't just look at it as, well, this other person has done it for longer than me and they're doing better. Maybe I'm not doing better because I'm not working as hard or putting the same level of effort. You have to consider this person's origin, where they started, how they started, when they started. And when I compare it to mine, I'm like, yeah, I did not have nearly as many chances and quality chances as this person did. Because even if I were to embark on the similar path to growth, say the company no longer offers certain opportunities, certain resources, certain benefits. So even then, at my age, I'm still losing compared to this other experienced person. That's where the discrepancy and the unfairness begins. And that's why it's important that you don't compare yourself with someone else unless you understand the origin of that person and objectively compare it to your origin. And there will be people who will try to downplay, discredit the way that you started off. They'll be in denial, but it's your responsibility to know what's real, to be honest, and make the objective comparison no matter who has a meltdown and no matter who tries to invalidate your point. Someone who was going through a difficult moment, a tough time, and you tell them that, I just feel like that's the kind of thing that pushes someone into making stupid decisions. And it pushes that person into staying in that dark place. And I think that's where I just understand how I am as a person, what I am as a person, and the reason of me being literally, because I always feel like I have been at the right place at the right time to undo that damage that someone verbally did to someone. And I'm not saying that I'm the savior and I'm successful all the time, because I think that the damage of hitting the negative feedback, depending on this person's mind, may outweigh the feedback that you may receive that is supposed to be empowering, that's supposed to be strengthening. That's where I am different. And that's what I try to convey here. When I get told something fucked up, sure, that fucked up thing I just heard stings. But that's when I know who to recur to in my directory for psychological assistance, I guess. And I'm like, let me go up to this person who knows about this topic, inquire and ask them, and I know that I have bestowed upon them the authority to tell me shit the way it is, whether I'm right or wrong, and then take it from there. Someone without authority telling me something fucked up is never going to outweigh the person who I have given authority to tell me things. Even if the person in my life who I have given authority to talk to me however they want, pretty much, even if they were to agree with this other person, I will still be inclined to credit my person, because I'm like, at least this other person didn't say that from a place of hate. Sometimes I feel like other people who you're not tight with, they'll say that from a place of contempt. And I don't have time for that level of toxicity. On the contrary, though, if the person who has authority in my life counters what this other person say, you better believe that I'll let go of what this other person says, even if this other person has more authority than the person invested in me personally. I think that is the key to controlling the bad influences in your life, the influences in your life that could bring you down. But I feel like the problem is that there are some people who don't make that distinction. You haven't taken the time to assign roles to people in your life. And the reason I did that is because at some point, especially because of the way I was raised, I was just taking the words of authority figures like they were the word of God. Like whatever they said, it was absolutely factual for me. These people were flawless. These people were not questionable, things like that. And then when I finally met somebody who was in a lesser position as someone in a position of power, but they showed me how this person in power truly is, I guess that's what I needed. And basically, this person I'm thinking about who was in that position, lesser position, she was talking to me about something. And then I mentioned how I'm kind of like intimidated by this other person in authority. And she was like, I do not understand why people allow this person to intimidate them. She does not intimidate me. And this is why. And then when she broke down this person, I said, I'm so disappointed in myself because I like to pull things apart myself, but I never ever considered doing that to a person in a position of power. And then little by little, with that seed being planted, along with my journey that I had initiated at understanding my issues with my parents, was I able to be like, oh shit, if I began the quest of questioning my parents, authority figures, why the fuck would I not feel inclined to do the same to these other clowns who are not even family? I should be more comfortable breaking down these others more than breaking down my own family. I guess I needed this other person to pave the path for me to walk on with a little less resistance because the resistance I was experiencing was myself. I sometimes think back about some of my teachers and I'm like, some of my teachers were clowns. Some of them did waste time entertaining certain students that had we just ignored them or put them outside of class, stuff would have flowed a whole lot smoothly. Damaging things to people are said all the time, and I just urge everybody to define who they are and what they allow to hurt them when it comes to the words that people say. And now the problem with me is that I am so impossible to upset now directly from a person that I feel like I no longer take authority very seriously because now I look at myself as no, I'm the authority here. And the only time I may go back to respecting authority is when the situation calls for it. Like, say, it is work, stuff is going down, you are the one in charge, and you're making decisions. I am here to be serving as an extension of you, the labor part of you. I comply pretty much. But outside of that, when it comes to gaining my self confidence, I'm just grateful that I have taken the time to do this and think about this and talk about this. Whether I talk about it with someone or to myself, but by extension to you guys, I'm just happy that I'm in this place because I never ever thought that I would be sitting here being this way. I never considered that these would be things I would be thinking about saying. And I just feel grateful that that is the one thing in my life going right for me, going well for me. And to me, that is a big achievement because as I evaluate others and the struggles they have, and I ask them the simple question of where does this come from? And they tell me where the issue started. And I said, have you addressed it? And they say, no. And they're significantly older than me in some cases. I'm like, oh, don't postpone matters like that. Because at the end of the day, I feel like if you have that handicap behind you, nothing else that you do in your life matters. I have asked this before, probably somewhere else in the past in the channel, but have you ever had a person who's like that, who has snarky remarks that pretty much brings people down, and that person who's brought down has a tough time letting go of that fucked up thing that this other crazy person said? And how did you deal with it? If it happened to you, how did you deal with it? Or if you observed this happening to someone else, what do you wish that someone else would have done? Do you wish that they would just take that insult and roll with it and not let it affect them? Or do you often take a more active approach and you hope that others do it too? Like, say, if someone told you something hurtful, especially something hurtful and untrue, do you stand up for yourself in the moment, or do you go away on your own in your car or at home and you evaluate the situation and you're like, bullshit, and then dismiss it? Or do you evaluate it and at some point come back, confront that person, and tell it how it is? I personally feel like nowadays I can say I take the more confrontational approach. I'm like, I heard this, and if I'm absolutely sure about myself because I have already pre-processed this incident before via another incident that was similar, I'm like able to give an immediate response in some cases, or in other cases I may delay my attack and come home to study the case a little bit, prepare myself, and then be like, okay, I'm prepared and qualified now to go address this clown about what happened today or something like that. Whereas before, I used to absorb the incident, come home, evaluate it, arrive at my conclusion, journal about it, and that was it. Turn the page, and I would remember this forever, but I wouldn't do anything about it. So I just want to know if you guys think that it makes a difference, or if you guys think that it really doesn't matter. To me, it made a difference to my self-esteem, because that's when I started to discover the power I have, my authority. And I guess I was just depriving myself of that because of my insecurities. And it doesn't help that when you've been alone for so long and you don't get, I guess, reinforcement or validation, no one telling you that they love you or like actively verbally supporting you and stuff, then I can see how I became insecure. Had I had loving parents, parents that were hugging and touchy and telling me that they love me, at least daily, and if not daily, then at least weekly or monthly, and not years without hearing that, I think I would have turned out a whole lot different. Because now, as an adult, I reached this stage without that strong foundation. And that's why I have taken this journey very seriously about calling out the things that worked for me, the things that didn't work for me, the things that keep me stuck, the things that are my strengths. I will always be proud of how very clear I have that in my mind. I can talk about this all day long from any direction. Compared to the past, I maybe could, but just not with the depth and confidence that I have now. Maybe I could have given hints of what I think was going on, but not really flesh it out like I can flesh it out in the present. And I think that's the point of you developing in the first place. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, that's it. Bye.